Hello, you lot. Welcome to That Mill podcast. My name's Omar. Joining me today, I have Frankie. Hello, mate. How are you?
Very good, mate. How are you?
Not too bad. We were just saying before we went live there, mate, and recording, missing the football a little bit, aren't we, mate?
It's boring, isn't it? It's boring. I'm about to spend time with missus, mate.
Tell you what, last week I was so obviously recording this on the Tuesday after the week after the season, so to speak. So I was like, I didn't mind it at first towards the start of the week after the Burnley game. And it got to the end of the week, I was like, what the fuck am I meant to do on the weekends? Do you know what I mean? Like, I was doing a bit of gardening, trying to keep myself busy. And it's not the same as it without our Saturdays, is it?
Yeah, watching the playoff games ain't helping, is it?
No.
Making it worse, if anything.
And also seeing Bristol City nosedive, but there you go.
Yeah.
We're here today anyway, guys. I'm about to run our intro. So welcome to That Mill podcast and the first episode of our three-part season review of the 24-25 season. So this episode is going to be focusing on the first third of the season. We're talking boardroom shake-ups, a summer of major signings, emotional goodbyes, and the heartbreaking loss of our number one, Matija Sarkic. We'll dig deep into this, how the season started, what went right, what went wrong, and obviously talk about how the season progressed from the start point of view. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and let us know where it all tuned for you early on. And if you're listening in, leave us a review, share it with a mate, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Right then, let's get that intro run and get into the first third of the 24-25 season.
Language you don't usually hear on television. Millwall in London's Dockland.
No one likes us, but we don't care. We're That Millwall podcast. Loud every Friday night right here. Legends like Jimmy Abdul take a share of the kitchen of two. Super Neil Harris a fucking legend too. Through the good times and in this life, we support the Lions all our life. This ain't no place for fancy feet. This is fucking Millwall through and through. Located on our very own John Ferguson way. Let them walk on, let them have their say. Millwall till we die. With That Millwall podcast, guys. Loud every Friday night right here.
Right then, I think, Frankie, when I was preparing these notes, I was thinking, where do we start? What do we talk about? Obviously, the first third of the season, all that shenanigans. But I think there's no better place, or worse place, whichever way you want to look at that one, than obviously the devastating news of Matija Sarkic obviously passing away June 15th, 2024. I remember being out in Germany at the first game for England and reading that news. And obviously, just from the year before, we obviously lost our chairman, John Berylson. But I think there's no better place to start than talk about Matija Sarkic. And obviously, that kind of what happened, and obviously, rocking our world in a sense, and really kind of getting the summer off to a uneasy footing, you could say.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Similar to you, I was in New York at the time, and woke up, saw it on Twitter, and couldn't believe it. There was a horrible familiarity, right? As I said, it just sort of brought back everything that happened the summer before with John. You think to yourself, this can't be happening again, surely. And as then more details are coming out, and it sort of got confirmed by morning, just people on Twitter, and awful way to start the season. And you think to yourself, like, it had, let's be honest, it had a tricky year before, right? And it started to look like a really, really good keeper. Obviously, final day heroics against Swansea, and then to lose that part of the dressing room was devastating.
It did, and you're totally right, man. I mean, look, you've got the fan base. I think also you've got the players and staff, and the club done its bit, didn't they? They kind of put tributes out to him and all the murals and stuff that came out since. And I think obviously I'm not really here to talk about the last part of the season, but also seeing the players at the end of the season walking on with his shirt, it's quick to forget because football moves on and life moves on, doesn't it? Really, but it was. I think it highlighted the real kind of effect it might have had on the players in the squad and the club in the general whole, really, wasn't it? And it also changed mood for someone, like we said, remind us all that football is more than just results. But it's it highlights obviously the impact, isn't it, that he had on the players. And he only played 33 games for us, but it was real kind of, like you say, getting himself underway for his Mill career, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, like, I'm so glad we got Neil Harris in charge, because you're thinking to yourself, if anyone has got the personality and the sort of emotional maturity to handle that situation tactfully and get the players through it, you did back Neil to be the right man in the dressing room to help lead the club through that, like he's led us through a lot of times. So, you know, yeah, I do think he did a good job in that circumstance. I think some of the statements we saw from Marshall, Harris, and the players were all incredibly emotional, but you'll handle it fantastically, didn't they?
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get on to the first game of the season, obviously, and the Sarkic Memorial game, so to speak. But obviously, in that time, as always, in a football club, and obviously, Matija, we miss you massively. But we'll talk about the other effects of the summer, in a sense, and a big boardroom shake-up as well, wasn't it, at the club, mate? Let's not forget. I think we rewind to the end of last season, and obviously around May time, we had a big change upstairs, didn't we? Obviously, we spoke about it multiple times on the podcast, but we've now got a chance to look back on them changes from a year on, pretty much to the date. Obviously, CEO Steve Kavanagh leaves the club, Chief Operating Officer Billy Taylor leaves the club, and Director of Football Alex Aldridge leaves the club, all depart in May. Quickly in comes Steve Gallen and Mark Fairbrother. I just wonder, thinking back to it now, what was your thoughts, obviously, initially seeing that? After finishing the season quite strong, Neil Harris came in to do a rescue job for us, didn't he, mate? And I mean, I'm sure Neil Harris is going to be the buzzword in this part because, listen, guys, I'm going to have to talk about him. So I'm looking at the first third of the season, and I know the viewers will be saying, here we go, let's talk about Neil Harris again. But a lot of changes, mate, especially at the top level. And obviously, looking back now, big changes that maybe played a significant part in how we could perform this season.
Yeah, 100%. I got personally, I wasn't surprised when I saw them leave. I was a bit surprised to see all three go on the same day. I thought the club might try to be a bit more gradual and steady with the change, but I think the fallout of the Joe Edwards situation the season before kind of had to rear its head at some point, and some people had to pay for that. And unfortunately, the three of them did. I thought Aldridge was a needed change and a new voice. I can't really talk for Billy. I'm not really sure why he was caught up in that sort of change up, but yeah, I think the club needed a change, right? But I do remember thinking at the time, whilst I'm happy with the change, like this is massive, isn't it? And this could really, it was egg in our face, and the club needed stability, didn't it? And we was going from another season of change, having lost John the year before, and lose all of these. It felt like obviously in different circumstances, but it did feel risky. I don't know how you felt at the time.
Yeah, no, I think I do agree with you. I think you can tell that Jake Berylson wants to be here and really kind of carry on his dad's legacy. And I think he said that in multiple interviews. But you never really know until you see it play out, right? And I think as a fan, you see him, like you said, all them changes, and maybe it was needed. Maybe it was obviously a shake-up that he felt was necessary. He's been in the job he was chairman for just under a year at the time when he decided to get rid of the three of them. Obviously, in Kavanagh's and Billy Taylor's cases, I know Aldridge came and gone a couple of times, but they're also people that have been at the club for a long time. And I think as a fan, you're thinking, right, it's a shake-up. I think when I speak about Berylson, how he done it, it's almost like a ballsy move, and he's going to live and die by his decisions. And it was a big kind of call to do, wasn't it? And I think it highlighted, obviously, that he's ambitious, I think, as well, because obviously he brings in Gallen and Mark Fairbrother. Obviously, Gallen comes as director of football. Mark Fairbrother is now the managing director of non-football operations. I think, obviously, he was quick to thank, obviously, Kavanagh and Co. Obviously, thanking them for their loyalty, then outlining his long-term vision for the club in the meantime. And he really obviously had a clear vision, even though you could say he's an American, he doesn't maybe have a full understanding of football. He's obviously been around it for a long time. There's a whole stigma around it, but he's obviously got that ambition, and he knew exactly what he needed to get two people, and he really trusted, I think.
Yeah, as you said, mate, it was ballsy, wasn't it? And it was incredibly bold. I did think it was slightly ironic that Cav's last sort of thing for the club was securing a long-term lease to the ground. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. But yeah, it was interesting. And again, we're going to go back to Neil quickly. But I remember thinking at the time, with all this change, it kind of left me with two questions of one, where does this leave us with Harris? Because the club's clearly going in a new direction. And you've got a manager maybe doesn't align with that. And we saw that play out. And I also thought to myself, on the flip side of that, though, with all this change, what you really need is continuity in a manager. So at least you've got one solid person stable that's sort of seen it all, been there, done it all with this football club and gets us. And again, I'm thinking at the time, like, I'm really glad Neil's here just to steady the ship and keeps on the straight and narrow. That didn't really play out, did it, mate, at all? But I'll get into that.
Well, maybe 4 or 5 months in football is actually not that bad. What is it, May time? Well, 6 months he lasted. So 6 months in football is like 6 years, mate. So, you know, he was
Oh,
here
yeah.
for at least bedding in period for the pair of them. Do you know what I mean? But I totally get that as well. What do you think's like the most evident change? Like now that we're looking back at it a year on, what's the most noticeable thing you think from a perspective as a fan? Like, obviously, you got people there at the club. We don't really need to know these people. We're there to watch a football club and watch the team. That's all we care about on a Saturday when we're at the den. But is there anything you feel like you've noticed, or anything you feel like is markedly different? Obviously, recruitment's one angle, that's for sure. But anything else that maybe sticks in your mind that is notably different?
Yeah, I think we've been a lot more ambitious and forward thinking when it comes like commercially. I think especially you look at the fan zone, how that stepped on. And don't get me wrong, previously I'd already stepped on and stuff, and it already made a lot of improvements with Harry's bar and that sort of thing. But we've continued down that path, and I think with recruitment similar. Obviously, we'd already had Caspar, we'd already bought Zian, but we probably went further down that road than we would have previously. I think we've been a lot more aggressive with trying to progress into a bit more of a forward-thinking football club. I think that's what I've probably noticed. It's a lot more aggressive than it would have been previously, when we was quite happy to maybe stay in our lane as Millwall, you know, sort of tread water and keep ticking on. I don't think we're like that anymore.
Do you think that's on the back of also maybe even the ownership? Because obviously, like I mentioned, it's ballsy from James Berylson. Maybe his dad was. John Berylson. I met him once or twice in passing, but he struck me as someone that was quite happy and trusted the people at the club in a sense, and was quite, maybe not hands off is the wrong word, but he put people in roles and he trusted them to get all their jobs and didn't necessarily need to be too involved. Where you could say maybe with James Berylson, he seems to be more heavily involved, perhaps. Is that maybe? I think that's something I feel like anyway.
I feel like he goes to more games. I couldn't quantify that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sitting there watching every game, but it feels like he goes to quite a lot more. And he's been to a few away games as well, hasn't he? Which I don't remember John particularly doing. Do I think the changes for them or from James? I think it's probably both. I think James has clearly made the change and tried to create a bit of a new culture, a lot more ambitious culture, a lot more, I said, aggressive in what we're trying to achieve. Whereas I do think John was maybe a bit more relaxed and sticking to the status quo, right? Of we're a small championship side. I'm not sure James quite respects that status quo quite as much.
No, it's fair. I totally appreciate it. I think also something I've noticed anyway, I feel it's markedly different, is the communication as well from the club. Maybe you could say, some people might say it's too much the other way, and it's a fine balance to strike it. But throughout the season this year, we've had updates from, Mark Fairbrother. I think these updates were there before, don't get me wrong, but it's more sitting down interview types on their Millwall TV channel. Gallen's done a couple after transfer windows and spoke about the vision and how he wants to do the transfer recruitment. The club's very transparent, I think, now, and everyone knows what they're trying to achieve. Like, as fans, and also they want us to buy into it. And I think that's something I feel like is notably different as well. I don't know what you reckon.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I think to your point, I think they kind of have to be like that, because you want people to, if you want people to get on board and accept that players are going to leave, players are going to come in, you're going to see things done a bit differently. When you ask people to part with 400 or 500 quid a season, you do kind of want to know why, don't you? Don't get me wrong, as you said, sometimes you do hear things in these interviews which you then think to yourself, I'm not quite sure I agree with that. And the more you say, there's more to be scrutinised, but it's definitely a step on, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think, obviously, be interested to see how this summer plays out, but we're here to review the 24-25 season anyway. And obviously, one big change, obviously we mentioned at top level, but also a summer of upheaval in a sense with the squad. Not too many departures, you could argue. Obviously, Cian Fleming left the club because he went on loan to Burnley. Kevin Nisbet departed later in August, going to Aberdeen. Alex Mitchell went to Charlton, and obviously Bart Bilkowski left and went on to retire. Well, I don't think he's officially retired, but if he has, I've not seen it. But he's enjoying himself on the beach in Spain every time he posts on his social media. But obviously a few key people there that were involved the year prior, Fleming in particular, and obviously Bilkowski, who's been here for a long time. And then in comes a few new arrivals, obviously notably Mihailo Ivanovic arrives on deadline day, Femi Aziz, Macaulay Langstaff, Dan Kelly, Tanganga converts to a permanent signing, and I think the club played a massive part in getting him in. And obviously Neil Harris was on the phone to him every day, kept saying, Ryan Wintle then joins, Lucas Jensen, Liam Roberts, to name a few. It obviously was a bit of a carousel at times, it felt like, especially towards the end of the window, didn't it, mate?
Yeah, it was a funny window, I thought. The there was obviously the Tanganga news. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was either the first or second signing. I can't remember if it was him or Langstaff in the end. But when you got Tanganga, you're sort of looking at the club, thinking, step on now, do more of an A career attack it, and that didn't really happen, in my opinion. To the point where you could tell Harris was maybe a little bit discontent with some of the dealings and some of the time it was taking. Understandably, completely get why. Not quite sure I agree with how he then vocalised that, but what he was getting at, I agreed with. The thing that really stuck out for me in the window, you look at some of the people we've got in. I did feel like the club was being pulled in two different directions a little bit. It felt like there was Gallen and the new balls and what they wanted to achieve, and there was Harris and what he wanted to achieve. And if you look at some of the signings, I think that did play out. You think like Ivanovic, Aziz, Ellie, probably signings that Harris wouldn't have made, if we're being honest. And then you compare that to Wintle, Tanganga, and Coburn and stuff. They felt a lot more Harris signings, didn't they? So coming out the window, I was a little bit nervous. I thought because it didn't feel particularly joined up, and I was a bit concerned in that sense. Well, I don't know how you felt about it, mate.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it was obvious. I think after the first couple of games, I think it was Bristol City away. We'll come on to the fixtures and the results a little bit more detail in a bit. But I can remember it was a bit of a passionate cry through the media. You touched on it, saying you don't know if you agree on it or not, on how we went about it. And maybe it was a boil up of frustration from his part. I mean, we're not oblivious to these conversations behind closed doors, clearly. But, I think at the time we had only signed, I think Tanganga committed. I don't think even Coburn arrived at that point. So,
Langstaff, yeah.
Yeah, we had Duncan Watmore scoring goals for fun at that point of the season, which was obviously a ton off the books. We'll come on to that in a bit. But, I think Langstaff joins. I think Wintle wasn't even done till towards deadline. And the questions were quickly being asked, like, are we going to sign players? And I remember thinking back, what did you anticipate for the season, actually, is a good question. A little bit of a tangent there, because I think I'd done a prediction saying probably somewhere between 17th and 19th. Like, I thought just stay up, stabilise. We mentioned the changes at top level. I was thinking this season is going to be survival almost, then go again this summer with the real intent of recruitment. What did you think?
Probably a bit higher than that, but I didn't think we'll get top half. I thought we'll probably be looking at anywhere between 12th and 15th. And I think that would be a good season. There was a bit of me that kind of felt, and I've already touched on this, but with the amount of change, and you could see that the club was maybe going in a different direction from Harris, it did feel like maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing to just get this season over, finish nicely in mid-table, bit of a quiet one, and then we could look to go again next year. Because there was obviously the lingering question of it. It did feel like the club was going in one direction and the manager wasn't, if we're being completely honest. So, yeah, I thought we'd finish mid-table, and for a large part of the season that looked like it was going to, didn't it, to be fair? Yeah,
I think also the question was Harris going to stay on? And obviously we know what happened, how it played out, but I think he joined, didn't he, initially on that 17, 18-month deal after joining Fairbrother 24. And I think that was the real kind of question. Is he going to want to commit or stay on? And you're right, the rumblings were there. And yeah, I mean, obviously we still signed Callum Scanlon as well. Let's not forget, who played, 4 games or 5 games for us. Obviously got injured his first game, got injured again, and we never saw him again after Luton. He also scored that goal, didn't he, against Cardiff, I think, if I remember correctly. But, it was, I guess it was just, it felt like a bit of an uneasy time. And I think there also was questions asked, wasn't there, of the likes of Gallen, believe it or not, even though he's only been in the job for 2-3 months. The questions were still there from the fan base of, have we done the right thing, or have we committed to too many changes? But I feel like it was a vocal minority, but obviously it changes so quickly, doesn't it? Especially on the back of a poor couple of results, so to speak.
Yeah, that was always going to happen as well, right? And people always there's always a single change of you go from excited to then suddenly almost regret. And I did understand why people were a bit concerned, because I had concerns. I didn't think it was a good window. I think my biggest issue with it all at the time was I just didn't agree with how Harris was communicating that then to the media and to fans, and it did feel almost like, for me personally anyway, quite early in the season, a lot of the joy and expectation and the excitement of our own new season was kind of sucked out of it quite early, because you could see the club wasn't particularly stable and all in, or sort of singing from the same hymn sheet.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think Gallen handled the pressure well. I think the only issue was, I think his statement was good, but I think he probably come too late, which I guess we'll come on to later anyway. But it was definitely an interesting time, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was for sure. I mean, on the departures, obviously Fleming leaving and Nisbet going. I won't ask you about what you think about Nisbet for next season or anything, but I think it felt like, especially a club that finished the season before last, what was it, 5 wins on the bounce, and I think they were all 1-0s, and it didn't. The hope of anticipation wasn't there, because it did feel like a flash in the pan, didn't it? So like when you're losing like someone like Fleming as well on deadline day, okay, it's worked out well in the end, you could argue, or you could say Fleming's gone to get the club promoted in the division, so maybe not. Do you know what I mean? But I think with the Fleming departure, it felt like he was angling for that more than anything, didn't it? And ultimately, you've got to respect players' wishes, but obviously, it feels like we're talking about business. You know, with rumours to be getting 7.5 million, I think, or say 5, 7, 8 million. The club's done well to get a decent fee for a player that, you know, is obviously clearly wants to go on and have his own ambitions, I suppose. And I think that's something I want to touch on as well. Like, they are being savvy, aren't they, the club, with their transfer business, it feels like, especially as well getting rid of players for the right price.
Yeah, 100%. It's something that as a club, I think most Millwall fans will say we haven't done well enough for years. You look at like Jed going on a free, that's criminal, isn't it, really? How much did we pay for Fleming? It was like 1.2 million, wasn't it? Something like that. So to times your money by like what, 5 is incredible business in 24 months. So credit where credit's due there. And obviously that was an Aldridge signing, someone that was just been let go. So again, I don't think obviously helped some of the nervousness of, you've got a good player, and the first real big decision Gallen made was to let your best player leave, right? You can understand some of the concern, but I do agree that I do think Fleming looked like it was maybe a little bit orchestrated. The injury seemed a little bit off. And we all heard nothing, right? It was radio silence from the club went around what was actually going on with him, and would he be back for the start of the season? Obviously, he wasn't.
Mysterious calf injury, wasn't it? He was starting. I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
I think it was clear he had his ambitions. He wanted to move on. He knew of the Burnley interest. I think we rejected a bid from them. I'm pretty sure before John Berylson passed away as well the year before. So he knew obviously that Burnley were lingering, and I guess it was inevitable they would come back in for him if they're in the same division and think he can do an impact at the Championship to help them. So it's a tricky situation, but I think the club, I am going to say we haven't had that situation well, I feel like, just about, albeit with all the questions over signing players. But I do think in that situation, I think it's difficult, but we managed to get the fee we have for him since, and we managed to recoup some of that outlay and obviously turn an investment into some profit as well, which I think is something we're going to have to get used to as fans, aren't we, mate? Especially with the summer lingering now, going into this summer. As fans, it's almost like, don't get too attached to your players, because if they're young and ambitious, they're joining the club, sold this vision, they know that if, you know, it's a right deal for them and the right deal for the club, the likelihood is they're going to move on to pastures new, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly that, mate. Exactly. I think if I was going to be critical of the club, I think with the Fleming situation, I wouldn't have wanted it to go down to deadline day. It kind of left the club with no option in terms of and again, you look at Harris's frustration, he probably was looking at the squad going, you just sold my best player, my main source of goals, my best main source of assists, my only number 10 is now gone. I can get why he might have been a little bit pissed off with that, to be honest with you. But as you said, mate, ultimately this is the direction the club want to go in, right? And so far it seems to be working with the new model of getting them in, getting players in young, improving them, selling them on. Yeah,
for sure. You know, your criticism of the deadline day deal, do you think club people hate me for saying this on this show sometimes, and people hate me saying it in general, to be honest, but do you think it's sometimes an element of also being a small fish in a massive pond, where Burnley can decide when they want to come and get Fleming almost? And I know we're in the same division as them. It's a negative way to look at it. And I feel like I've got sometimes a sense of realism to this subject. And sometimes, I'm not saying people don't have realism. I understand the frustrations. But ultimately, Burnley decide when they want to come in for our player. And if they put the money there and the player's head's turned, what are we meant to do as a club? We can say no and then lose him, and the value then diminishes on him and he goes on a free transfer. It's a hard situation for a club like us, isn't it, realistically?
Yeah, 100%, mate. If the bid weren't there 2 days before, then the bid weren't there. There's nothing they could do about it. And obviously, there was a little bit playing out at the time. They was going for Morgan Whittaker, weren't they? And then they bid 12 million, didn't get him, and then went back to Zian. So he obviously wasn't their primary target in some ways. So the club was a little bit stuck.
Mhm.
But then you do think to yourself, would you have been better just holding fire, keeping hold of him and going, well, we'll reassess in January?
Mm.
Ultimately, decided not to do that. And I don't think any of us can complain about the figure at the time. It was our record ever sale by some distance, I believe. So, no, Savile was about the same, wasn't it?
That all comes close,
Yeah.
I think. I was gonna say,
Yeah. So, around the same sort of money for Savile, which God knows how we got that. So, you can't really complain too much, can you? You
No.
are right. It's sometimes it is out of our hands. We have to respond to what's happening to us, I guess.
I
Same
think
with
people,
transfers in.
yeah, I think people come back with me with that. It's like well, I'm lacking ambition. It's like, yeah, I'm not lacking ambitions. It's just sometimes the realism comes into it for me. But we're in a position now financially with incomings and money coming into the club that we're in a position to be a bit more stern with these situations. But we've got to feed the model as well, I suppose. But I digress. We'll probably go on to about this subject for ages and ages. But if anyone's got any thoughts and comments on what we've said so far, please be sure to comment and like the video and subscribe. If you're listening on audio, please be sure to also follow us and share us around and pass the pod on, as the famous pod says out there, which anyone that gets that reference, fair enough to you. We'll go on to the games. Millwall scored 5 goals in their first 2 games. We also concede 7. We lose 3-2 and 4-3. True Millwall start to the season. I mean, to be honest with you, if anyone predicted them 2 results to start the season, I tip my hat to you because I don't think anyone predicted that. But I want to put you a bit on the spot. I don't know if you've got it in front of you, but please don't look if you haven't. What was our starting 11 for the first game of the season? We lined up in a 4-2-3-1 formation. If you get this right, I'll be fair play to you because the season is a long, winding one. But can you guess our 11 that day? You're looking down at your phone, mate. So no cheating. It's Watford at home.
The phone's over it. 4-2-3-1. Jensen in goal.
Yep.
Leonard right back.
Yep.
Tanganga was suspended.
Yeah, he was.
So it would have been Hutch and Cooper.
Yeah, spot on.
Joe Bryan.
Yeah.
It has to be Denor because he started every game.
Mm-hmm.
Who started centre mid with him? Billy Mitchell was injured. Wint hadn't signed yet. Savile.
Yep, correct. Very good.
Right midfield. Essay started, didn't he?
He did, mate.
And he weren't very good against Watford. One of his only bad games that season. Centre attacking mid. Again, process elimination. I'm going to have to go Honeyman.
It was George Honeyman. Yeah, very good. Very 9 for 9 that so far.
What more was that left?
Yeah.
Because he was shocking that game. And then suddenly scored a hat-trick. And up top, Nisbet come off the bench. I remember that.
He did, yes.
I can't remember if it was Langstaff that started or Bradshaw. I want to say it was Bradshaw.
It was Bradshaw, the Neil Harris love child, as people were labelling him and getting very frustrated about throughout the first third of the season. Mate, fair play. Do you know what? Despite us doing this podcast to talk about it, I maybe could have guessed it, but I wouldn't have been 100% sure. And I know you weren't 100% sure saying that, but you've done very well there, mate. It was 11 out of 11. The reason why I highlight that is obviously...
Is there a prize for that, sorry, mate?
No, might buy you a bit at the start of the season if you remember to pull me up on it. How about that next season? There you go. But no, I think what I was highlighting there is obviously not much change from the season before last. Obviously, Sarkic no longer with us, but this is in goal. Back 4 is something we're very familiar with, obviously from season before. The same in the midfield too. SA, Honeyman, Watmore, Bradshaw. No debutants in that side. To reiterate our point about obviously recruitment and Harris' frustration, no new blood in that side, which highlights the kind of backs. What's the word I'm trying to say? We started from a position of we had to get back and kind of play catch up almost for the summer, and we did do that eventually. But yeah, I mean, obviously Wintle wasn't the rise. All these players hadn't come in just yet. It kind of makes sense why we had such a poor start to the season. I'm going to say almost, especially with Tanganga not being available. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%, mate. And again, I said it earlier in the show. I do understand why maybe Neil wasn't particularly happy, particularly after the Bristol City game. What really did shock me, I don't know how you felt about this at the time, mate. The results weren't great. I thought the performances were actually genuinely quite encouraging. And the biggest thing for me coming into the season was you think about Neil's future and where he fits in with the club moving forward, and you think to yourself, we finished last season on 5 wins. If he can improve the football a little bit and be a bit more pleasing on the eye, whilst also getting some good results, he's the right man for the job. Ultimately, you'd have said, wouldn't you? So when you're then watching them games, you sit there going, we're scoring goals for fun here. Like,
Yeah.
it felt like he cracked it, even though we were losing. I remember leaving both games thinking, get Tanganga back in, we win both of them. I was actually quite happy. And that seemed to be the theme for the first, I don't know, 10, 15 games of might not have won, but I thought we played all right.
Yeah, I think it's something like everyone calls for the more expansive style of play, don't they? And they want to be entertained as opposed to just, like the season before last, like we kept saying, digging out the 1-0 wins, surviving by the skin of our teeth. Well, didn't play out that way by the final game of the season, but point was, without that 5-game run, we might be talking about League One season right now.
Yeah.
So, and it was, can you get it right? And you're 100% right to point that. And it's like, that's what I was about to go with that myself. Like, it was entertaining to watch, but this is the toss-up, isn't it, almost, where if you play a bit more expansive, you're going to leave yourself on board at the back. And the squad's not there yet to play that style, maybe you could say, at the start of the season. But he gave it a go. And he also changed to a 4-2-3-1 because he was playing 4-4-2, I think, with Fleming and Obafemi or Fleming and Bradshaw up front. I did season before last. So it was early signs of an evolution, you could say, maybe. Is that fair to say? I feel like
I think so, mate. Yeah, I think so. And I think the big thing that sort of shocked me was seeing Romain Esse starting, I think, against Watford, because he hadn't really got much minutes before under Neil, Rowett or Edwards. And then suddenly he's starting the first couple of games this season, young player, a flair player, you could say you have a luxury player. There was definitely an evolution in the style. I think he definitely embraced what people were after. To your point, I think personally, when I'm talking about like a better style of football, I don't necessarily mean more possession, more passing. For me, it's just like better football could be passion, someone getting into a tackle, so a little bit of pride, a little bit of commitment. That can be exciting to watch, and that Neil Harris side at the start of the season had that in spades. Just we weren't beating anyone at the time. Weren't we top of the XG table for like the first 10 weeks of the season?
Yeah, we were.
It was mental.
With chances created, and we mentioned Watmore scoring 5 goals in 5 games. I mean, so just recap our August. So I guess we're doing blocks like this. We lost 3-2 to Watford at home. We beat Portsmouth 1-0 in the League Cup. We then travelled to Ashton Gate, lost 4-3. Tanganga returns, and then I think we conceded 6 goals in 12 games or something stupid, didn't we? It was defensively we shore things up. I think after the open start to the season, Harris quickly retreated back to normal, you could say. A 0-0 draw at Hull. We then got eliminated. Eliminated away. It was a long away day as well. I had a good day, but it was a long away day. A 1-0 defeat at home to Leyton Orient, and a couple of comments I probably will come on to in a sec. And to see off the month, a 3-0 win at the Den against Sheffield Wednesday. And Sheffield Wednesday at the time, let's not forget, Danny Roll and all this hype talk, it was Sheffield Wednesday going to go up this year or kind of challenge, and we brought them down to earth, didn't we? I think Coburn got 1, Watmore got 1, and Cooper got 1. And you're right, the possession is not important. That game, we had 18 shots to their 4. We knocked on the door, asked questions, but they had 60% of the ball. So that evolution, you're right, it was very much more attacking, I felt like, and going for it because it was a new season, clean slate, and off we went. But yeah, I mean, obviously talk about the results there. Anything else stand out for you from August or anything that sticks in the memory?
I think the biggest thing that really stuck out in August was once we did get the players finally over the line towards the end of the window, admittedly, and some of the injuries started coming back. So I remember us being quietly quite optimistic that every question that we'd probably asked of Harris at the time around keep us in the league for a start, starting to evolve it, starting to bed in some of the younger players, ticked all them boxes, right?
Yeah.
So I was, quietly happy, despite the fact that the window had maybe sort of highlighted that there was some underlying issues. Yeah,
for sure. Another talking point, so I mentioned the Leyton Orient defeat. He killed Macaulay Langstaff and Amaku, didn't he, after the game? And I think to the effect of comments, players knocking on my door wanting to play, and this is what they...
And fans.
Sorry?
And he mentioned about fans saying about him starting as well.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what we were offered. He made a lot of changes that night. And it's a cup game at home when you've got 3,000-4,000 fans there. It was a poor game. There's no ifs or buts about it. And we were very poor on the day, weren't we? I think the highlight for me was Andy Marshall wrestling the fan off the pitch because
Is it that game?
I think it was that game where he come on the pitch and the gaze off the pitch, didn't he? Because none of the stewards were there to be seen because there was no stewards needed because all the other stands were closed. But yeah, I mean, it was the comments were very. It was the first. Obviously, we saw the rumblings of the transfer talk and all that stuff in the media, mate, didn't we? But that was the first time where I thought his head's gone here a little bit, Harris. Like, what are you doing? Like, he's killing Amaku mainly there, weren't he? He was just like, these players are knocking on the door for my training. That's what they offer me, basically. It's like just shooting any chance or confidence that these players might have, especially a young player like Amaku, right?
Yeah, and obviously Kelly started that game, didn't even come off at half time, and
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So yeah, it was disappointing, and it obviously was a bit of a sign of things to come, which we'll talk about another time, I guess. But I got the impression that almost maybe the pressure he put himself under a little bit with some of the comments, and it maybe got like it all just got in his head. But it wasn't a particularly good look, even though he was right. The players weren't good on the night. It was disappointing to hear, I guess. I don't know how you felt about it at the time.
Yeah.
You're probably more of a Harris fan than I am. So
I'm very pro Harris. I didn't think he was wrong with what he said. I just didn't think he was necessarily to say in the media, to be honest. Like the comments taken in isolation, what he says, I agreed with as a fan watching that game. So I didn't disagree with it. It's just you don't say that after the game in the press, do you? That's the facts. Like I think it kind of highlighted maybe the early season power struggle between the board, between Harris, between the fans even. You got three kind of. A lot of people think Harris has got this arrogance to him because he's missed them all, but I feel like he's entitled to have that if that's what we're going to call it.
If anyone's
entitled to it, and look, I think it was wrong what he said in the press, but I didn't disagree with what he said. He shouldn't have said it, but I didn't disagree. Is that fair?
Yeah, I completely agree with that, mate.
Yeah, and if people disagree with me, feel free to, like I said, comment it. But yeah, like it was obviously like just it was just edgy. It was like, what are you doing?
It was the first time that season. I wasn't involved in the podcast at the time. I commented, I think, sort of asking the question, and it was the first time I thought to myself, I can't see him finishing the season. Like I just really can't see him finishing the season, and it was the first time I really thought this could be another disaster of having to change mid-season. And the best thing about having Harris here was that continuity. If you then lose that, we are bang in trouble.
Yeah. You're right.
So I was nervous. Yeah.
You're right, because obviously, like, you don't want that. And also, you can only imagine, obviously, the club's coming out of this vision of young players, opportunity to play. They then present the market value for us. And so Amaku fits into that criteria. Let's have it right. We don't know this for a fact, but you've got to imagine the club is saying, give these young players an opportunity, Kelly, Amaku. And he comes out and kills him in the press afterwards. It's like, you could say, if you're being a cynic, like maybe he's trying to steer a narrative away from what the club were trying to do. And it just adds a lot of fuel to the fire, doesn't it? I mean, obviously it plays out the season. We all know what happens, but it adds to a situation, doesn't it, nonetheless? But I mean, the international break comes around after the Sheffield Wednesday game. We move on to September. We had 3 games that month. Luton at home, QPR away, and Preston at home. 1 win, 1 draw, 1 defeat. Kind of sums up the start of the season as a whole, really, doesn't it? Like, it was very patchy. We didn't really get any continual form together. The Luton game was disappointing, from what I remember. And obviously, you know, Luton went on to get relegated. And obviously at the time, thinking, well, I remember going into that game thinking Luton's going to turn it around because they're too good to go. You know, they're too good to be where they are. They're going to 100% get back up there, ain't they? Do you know what I mean? But funny how football plays out sometimes. But the Luton game, and obviously QPR away, 1-1 draw. Langstaff provides a good assist for Watmore to get his 5th goal of the season. And then a nice 3-1 win to end the month at Preston. Anything sticks out from them games for you, mate?
Yeah, there was an incident at the QPR game that I thought again was maybe one of another nail in the coffin almost for that season, where again we played excellent against QPR. I thought we were outstanding. We went there the year before on the Redwoods and it was terrible. This was chalk and cheese. We completely dominated them. Yeah. But there was Honeyman in the 10 missed an absolute golden opportunity, didn't they?
He did.
And the social media, let's call it the reaction online. Let's be kind. Yeah. It was pretty damning. And I think Harris did catch a bit of flack for that. you know, for Honeyman being in the 10, and wrongly or rightly, people weren't happy with that situation. Honeyman, of course, then scored against Preston the week after.
He did, yeah.
A very similar chance. So that's football, right? But again, there was another, even in that 3 games, you know, you could see that was the full Harris experience, when people sitting there getting his back online, then you win the next game 3-1 and look really good.
Yeah.
And obviously the immaculate red card as well. Impressive.
The immaculate red card against Preston as well, that's the big one. I think with the Honeyman thing, that was, at that point, we've only won 1 game all season, and in the league, and only 5-6 games, but football fans, we don't sit about, do we? We don't. And it's panic stations. What's going to happen here? What's going to end up being the outcome here, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, you're right. And I think Honeyman got a lot of flack. He continues to get flack, but it's interesting. I guess we'll break the rule here and talk about, obviously, Alex Neil coming in, but Honeyman finds his way back into sides, doesn't he? He's that reliant Eddie a little bit that you want in the side, a bit like what Murray Wallace was a few seasons ago, where you can put him at left back, left centre half. You know, they'll do a job for you. And I think there's that value to Honeyman, which I think he got scapegoat because he's playing the 10, but I feel like at the time he was freeing up Romain Esse to do a lot of what he was doing on the right side, because you have someone next to him that's a bit of an enforcer, holds the game and kind of adds that work rate next to a player like Esse, who also came on leaps and bounds with the defensive work rate, didn't he? And that was notably different for the first third of the season. So it's a tough one for Honeyman, and I feel like he got a lot of unnecessary flack, but you can't look past the misses he had. I remember a home game, I think it was around that time as well, where he misses another sitter, and I think it was almost an open goal. I think it might have been the Luton game in the first half. He misses a big chance in front of the away fans, but yeah.
I think so.
Was it? Yeah. It's
No, it was Luton. Sorry, yeah, it was Luton.
Luton, yeah. So like, it's a tough one, isn't it? But like I said, it was the first kind of signs of real rumblings, wasn't it? Yeah,
100%, mate. I completely agree with your point around some of the stick he got was maybe a bit unfair, because anyone could tell Honeyman was a player that was doing his best in a position that was a bit unnatural to him. All right, you can sit there and go, he's a professional footballer. You can't be missing from a yard out. That is true. He was running his nuts off, and you said about Esse, he was electric early part of the season, wasn't he? And the improvement in him, the defensive maturity, getting back, he just bulked up, looked so much stronger. You used to sort of think to yourself, if Esse's on the pitch and feeling it, we've got half a chance here.
Yeah.
And Honeyman allowed him to do that, allowed him to be a bit more of a luxury player, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. I totally agree with you. And then you mentioned the Preston game, obviously 3-1 win at the Den. Goals from Honeyman and Esse, quite fitting. And a goal from Macaulay Langstaff. He's won an only goal this season.
You'd never see that at a time, would you?
Yeah, well, exactly, for sure. And then I wanted to talk about the immaculate red card, and obviously we spoke about the Laureate game. He gets an opportunity to come off the bench. We're 3-0 up at the time. I think they go 3-1, and straight afterwards he gets sent off for that red card. He didn't do himself any justice, especially when we're saying that Harris might have a preconception of the player. He shot himself in the foot. But yeah, talk to me about the Preston game. Obviously, like I said, Langstaff scoring, Esse coming to prominence as well. But yeah, I mean, the immaculate red card, it was untimely, to say the least, from him.
It was a funny game, the Preston one, because I thought we were excellent for large spells, and then kind of made hard work of it in the last 10 minutes and made it more interesting than it should have been. We gave him a cheap goal from a Joe Bryan mistake, which was characteristic at that point in the season. Let's be fair.
A bit.
I think I was actually kind there, rather, if anything. And then the immaculate red card was just so stupid. And then to your point, you're sitting there thinking, this is clearly a man just got an opinion of you. He was critical. He's brought you on with a chance to get at your defender, and you're 3-0 up, like just or 3-1 up to go and have fun.
Yeah.
And he's got stupid. What was it? Was it a headbutt in the end of the? I can't remember.
Yeah, and then I think also there's a picture of him trying to grab Geezer's nuts, if I'm not mistaken, that went viral as well. No. Yeah.
He did. Yeah. What on earth? And again, it's just the Paul Harris experience, right? If you might be sitting there, we're all sitting there against Lake Norwich going, shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have said that. And then 2 games later, you're going, or 3 games later, you're going, yeah, he's right though. He's right. He's an idiot. Yeah.
No, you're right. And yeah, so obviously that was September. October then came around, and from October we had the following results. We had Cardiff away. A second. Do you know what the score was that day?
Yeah, 1-0, yeah.
Not to Millwall either, just in case anyone forgets. A 0-0 draw at West Brom. A 1-1 draw Derby County at home. A 1-0 win against Plymouth, followed by a 1-0 win away at Swansea. And yes, Casper Denor got a last-minute goal. Similar to his goal, quite fittingly, that happened the season before last, 5 days of the season, albeit that was the last minute of the game. But yeah, October, what sticks in your mind for them games, mate?
The Cardiff result was obviously shocking, wasn't it? It was shocking, and
Yeah.
I think you said earlier, like there was points where the Cardiff game, the whole game, the West Brom game was just incredibly dull. When you're thinking, are we regressing? Are we going away from some of the football that, all right, maybe wasn't getting us results we needed, but we all agreed was more exciting to watch as a fan. That's definitely what stood out. The Derby game again, I thought we were terrible that day. Ivanovic got his first goal of the season that game, didn't he? Rounded the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And you're thinking to yourself, there might be a player in there that obviously did play out. And the Plymouth game was 1-0, wasn't it? It was Esse that scored that day.
Yeah, I think he rounded the keeper, didn't he? If I'm not mistaken, that was the game he scored a 1-0 win, I think. No.
Yeah, it was 1-0. Yeah, it was another one where you think to yourself, it was just a flat game, though, wasn't it? And we picked up, you could argue, we picked up better results. Certainly got more points, but the football that we saw earlier that was exciting wasn't there. And it didn't. There was nothing there that sort of got rid of any of the question marks, right?
Yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to say. I don't know about yourself, mate.
No, that's it. I think there's still obviously everything was lingering. I think one thing I took from that, what Harris offered always, was the home form was still quite good. You know, some comprehensive wins. We mentioned we've got one in August, 3-0 win, 3-0 win in September, and obviously a couple of good home wins in amongst it there with Plymouth and such. And I think that's what Harris always guaranteed to us. The home form was, you know, in that kind of spell was decent. You got it's always a toss up, I find, when you talk about like how the team does, because I think from a club point of view, you want the team to do well at home games. Obviously, you want them to do well overall, but you want fans to keep coming back. And I was always wanting for more at that time of the season, especially at home, because I felt like we could always take teams on. You mentioned Esse's qualities and obviously how he made an impact on the side, and it was exciting. You always went to games. It's quite negative again in me, but I always thought, as long as we've got a chance to score a goal, we'll probably keep it back in the net that time of the season. And it's like, I'll take a 1-0. You know what I mean? That's not how I felt at the time. Like, Tanganga was doing his business at the back. His prominence, you know, we talk about the first third of the season. I think the two standouts for me, if we move on to that a little bit, it was definitely Esse and Tanganga, I think, for that time of the season. I don't know what you felt.
Yeah, and what more was exceptional in them first couple of games? 100%. I think they were the three that really stood out. Just thinking back to at the time, I think it was after the Preston game. I know I'm going back now, I'm regressing a little bit, but Honeyman made a comment about in the press after around we haven't got the points we deserved, and that seemed to be the biggest talking point at the start of the season was, are we getting what we deserve out of games? And we arguably weren't, I don't think, and it was a bit. It was a funny one, right? I think a lot of people were starting to maybe get a little bit jittery already. I thought the Plymouth game at the time, whilst not a great performance, was a massive win for keeping the sort of vultures away almost for Harris, which he continued to do, right? So, another tricky month, but there was some encouraging signs, I thought.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've got the table in front of me for the 31st of October, 2024. Do you remember what place we were at that point in the season, mate? Have a guess?
How many games have played? 12
games. So we had 4 wins, 4 draws, 4 defeats, 15 goals scored, 12 conceded. So this is like very synonymous with our season, just flat line average.
Yeah,
not a bad way.
Shit, yeah.
What place were we at the table?
I'm going to say 12, mate.
We were 10th place. Do you know who was top at the time? By 5 points.
Who was top?
Yeah, by 5 points that stage of season.
Sunderland?
It was Sunderland's. Oh, mate, your knowledge. I'll give it to you. Millwall Stato over here. That little podcast Stato.
This one. Absolute loser.
So yeah, the table read Sunderland first, Burnley second, Leeds third, Sheffield United fourth, West Brom fifth, and Blackburn sixth. Relegation places were occupied by Luton Town in 22nd, Queen's Park Rangers in 23rd, and Portsmouth rock bottom at 24th. So good job by John Moutinho in the end there, it's got to be said. But yeah, I mean, what was your feelings at that point? It's kind of getting used to the new system, obviously the rumblings we mentioned throughout the whole of this episode, and we went on to have a good November and stuff, but unfortunately I can't talk to you about that today, mate, because we're coming towards the end of this. But, you know, like, it was a real kind of middle of the road, but I would have took that at that stage of the season. 10th place by the end of October, I would have bit your hand off for that, especially at the start of the season when I was predicting 19th place in the table.
100%, mate. I was exactly the same. I thought the performances, the results, whilst not fantastic, were good enough. And I think the most important thing for me was a lot of the questions of Harris, style-wise, tactical ability. He'd answered a lot of them. My biggest frustration at the time was I almost felt like he'd let himself down a little bit because he'd passed everything with flying colours so far. But just wouldn't shut up moaning about stuff, you know. And I thought I found it frustrating, mate. Thinking, if you just get on with it, you're actually doing a cracking job here.
Yeah,
incredible job. And at the time, I would have kept him on for another. I would have renewed his contract, I think.
Is power struggle a fair thing to say? Do you think we're finishing up here? I mean, Harris is going to be spoken about, obviously, his departure in the next part, but I don't know if he'll be around for that one. So, was it ultimately the power struggle? He didn't like what was playing on above the pitch in the board level, do you think? Where do you sit with it all, mate? Because it was very, do you know what? Even before the end of the season before, he was very clear, I'm here to do a job. And he went into pre-season saying, I'm here to do a job. And that was before and after the changes at board level. So maybe he never felt like he was going to be a past this season. Maybe he knew it himself. Maybe he thought he was lucky to be in the position he's in, to get another job in the Championship. I don't know. Where do you think his head was at? This, we've come towards the end of October.
If I'm going to be completely honest, I almost got the impression that he knew he weren't going to be staying on from the club's point of view. Whether he had an issue with that or not, only he could tell you. I do think there was maybe a degree of his concern was, I'm being given a squad that's not good enough to stay in this league. You're asking me to perform a miracle again. And I don't want to have another relegation on my CV. And I do think there was a little bit of self-preservation in there from his perspective. No issues with that from our point of view. I get it. It's a cutthroat game, right? You've got to be a bit selfish. So yeah, I think there probably was a little bit of that. And you're going to touch on it next episode, so we won't be a bit of a. I don't want to spoil it for everyone, but even though we all know what happened, I think
he left. Just everyone knows.
Sorry, mate.
He left. Just everyone knows.
yeah. If people didn't know that, they've got a terrible shock, mate. But I do think the biggest issue was Oxford.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that was the beginning of the end.
Do you not like being called a thicko? Is that what you're trying to say?
He won't talk to me.
No.
He definitely won't refer to me, mate. I knew he was top of the league, and I can recite the first start 11, so I'm definitely not thicko. A sad bastard, maybe, but
yeah, no, mate. Frankie, you're many things, but a sad bastard. No, I wouldn't call you that, mate. Never. Right, we are slowly coming to an end. So obviously that was the first third of the season. We found ourselves in a position where 10th place. I would have took it personally, to be honest. Frankie, thank you for reliving the first third of the season with me, anyway, mate. I'm much appreciated.
Thank you very much, mate. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah,
even though I won't be here, look forward to listening.
Yeah, you might return. You never know. You might make it for the third one if you're lucky. You might get called up. And so that is a wrap on episode 1 of our 3-part season review. From the loss of Matija Sarkic to a full shake-up behind the scenes, and the squad still figuring itself out. The early months of the season were anything but steady, but that's the Millwall way. We still made it through a few wins, a lot of questions, and just a flicker of hope. If you've enjoyed this, make sure to hit subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with a fellow Lion. And we want to hear from you. Tweet us or drop a comment below. What was your biggest takeaway from the first few months of the season? Next up, we dive into the middle third, and Harris walks, if you didn't know. Jensen steps up. Obviously, that's a whole talking point, which we'll be sure to dabble into. And the new face takes the reign at the Den. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in episode 2. And yeah, bye-bye, everyone.
Oh, giddy up and get away. Oh, we're going Millwall, and we're going today. Here we go. rocking all over the dance.